Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Alter Your Health podcast, your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. And I'm Dr. Benjamin Alter. I am the host of this podcast, and I am a licensed naturopathic doctor. My passion is showing people how they are their own true healer, using food as medicine, and also understanding how the mind works and how to leverage the power of the mind to be our greatest ally in the healing process. And these kind of things I offer through holistic online consultations around the world, also through our medicinal living online course, which is our newest offering at Alter Health. You can find out more at www.alter.health/course. So this episode is not about me though, you guys. This is about our guest, Dr. Brooke Goldner, who is also using food as medicine and has been doing so in her life. She actually reversed lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease, 14 years ago, and is lupus free today, 14 years later, on a hyper nourishing diet. And that's just what happens. When I heard Dr. Brooke Goldner's story, I actually wasn't surprised. I know that the body heals itself always, 100% of the time. That is when we provide it the proper resources and environment for it to heal itself. And that's what it's all about in this conversation. We learn about Dr. Goldner's journey, being diagnosed with lupus at age 16, living with lupus through medical school, and then healing from lupus and now supporting people in healing from all sorts of other autoimmune diseases through her hyper-nourishing nutrition protocol. So you can learn more about Dr. Brooke Goldner at veganmedicaldoctor.com. Also goodbyelupus.com. So before we dive in, just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Let me know how this lands. And also, if you would be so kind, you can share it with someone who, might be struggling with an autoimmune diagnosis themselves. You can send it off in an email, or you can even bring it up in a good old-fashioned conversation and just be like, hey, I just learned about this woman, Dr. Brooke Goldner, and she actually reversed her lupus using food as medicine. And I learned all about it on this great podcast with Dr. Benjamin Alter. And anyways, you get the idea. Share this information in the world, and thank you for being on the other end of this podcast, receiving the information and living from a place that is empowered and informed. It inspires me. So thanks for being open-minded in this way. And without further ado, let's go ahead and sit back and enjoy this great conversation with our guest, Dr. Brooke Goldner. All right. Welcome, Dr. Brooke Goldner. Welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's lovely to connect. And I'm a little bit familiar with your story and, what you've been through and the services that you now offer. But would like to hear, a little bit about where that started, I know your story is healing autoimmunity, healing lupus, and you wrote the first book. I think you just published your second. Is it your second, or have you written more?
Book. Yeah. So my first book, Goodbye Lupus, was in 2015, and Goodbye. And then I had a green smoothie recipe book, and then Goodbye Autoimmune Disease just came out yesterday on Amazon. Yeah.
All right. Super cool. And I saw that it is already within the span of a couple hours already a #1 bestseller in some category on Amazon. Super cool.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited because doing a book is kind of like being pregnant. It's this labor of love. It's really hard. It's time consuming. You don't sleep well, and then you give birth to it, and you just hope it's okay. So
is it going to survive?
Yeah, there's a sense of relief today. I feel like I had another baby, I hope everybody loves it. I hope it, but it was same thing happened with Goodbye Lupus. Nobody even knew who I was when I wrote that, and it became a bestseller in the pre-order. I had just posted to Amazon that I was about to release a book, but nobody knew who I was. I didn't tell anybody, and then it went bestseller right then. And then this one is the same thing. I uploaded, okay, it's on Amazon. And then right before bed, I checked and it was #1 new release. And I woke up this morning and it was bestseller. I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. But, for me, it's
Wow.
about getting the word out. And it also shows me people are hungry for this information. I mean, they really need it. And they're just waiting for that next bit of information that's going to take them the rest of the way to getting their health back.
Yeah, why do you, I mean, I hear that about, people being hungry for that level of information that you're putting out there, but why, any other reasons why you think that you kind of came out of nowhere and just wrote this stuff that, people really connect with? Is there anything else that you think is like a magic ingredient to that?
Well, I mean, one thing is this is truly I believe this is my life's purpose and mission. You mentioned a little bit about my background. Well, I mean, I'm a medical doctor, but I started out as a patient. So at 16 years old, I was diagnosed with lupus, and I had 2 years of chemotherapy, high dose steroids. I had stage 4 kidney failure. I've had mini strokes. So, I mean, I was sick for much of my life. And even in medical school, I had lupus and actually had the mini strokes in medical school because, not sleeping, lots of stress, just like the doctor says not to have. So, I understand what it's truly like to be chronically ill and to try to push to have a normal life in spite of being in chronic pain and dealing with all of these symptoms and taking all these medications. And I also have the perspective of I am a board certified medical doctor, and I understand not only how the diseases work, but I have a unique understanding into how to use nutrition to manipulate your inflammation pathways to get the inflammation to go away and untrigger the genes for your disease. And I also have decades of experience. I mean, there's nobody else who can show you 5 hours of case after case after case of somebody who used to have rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or multiple sclerosis or mixed connective tissue disease, and how I used lifestyle modification, primarily nutrition, to help them release that disease. So for myself, I had lupus for 12 years, serious lupus. It wasn't just like a little rash here and there, serious lupus with organ problems. And now this year in October, it'll be 14 years that I don't have it. So I think it's the combination of, one, truly having lived it. I'm not just a white coat saying, here's, I studied disease and I know what I'm talking about. I lived the life of chronic disease. And I'm also a doctor. I've also done genetic research in disease. So, I have both sides of it. And I think that appeals to people to know that here's a doctor who actually knows what it's like to be sick, but is also extremely experienced and knowledgeable. And I have the case results to prove it, So sometimes people will write books based on research they read. My books are based on actual true life stories and experience. So Goodbye Lupus is my story of healing. Goodbye Autoimmune Disease is the accumulation of all of the information and experience that I've had over the past decade of doing disease reversal, why people don't just follow the diet in Goodbye Lupus, right? In Goodbye Lupus, I say, here, eat this, don't eat this, you'll get better. And while you can see from my reviews that, thousands of people have done it and gotten their health back, there's so many people who don't do it. And that's because this is an emotional journey as well. And food is about addictions, and there's motivation problems and self-sabotage. And so I'm also a board certified psychiatrist. And so what I'm really good at is helping people understand the mindset of healing and why you hold yourself back. Why would you choose to eat something that makes you sicker if you truly want to be healthy? So it has the mindset, and then it has chapter after chapter of case studies of people who did what I told them to do and got their health back, really for inspiration and for it to be normal. Because in my world, it is normal that diseases go away. Chronic disease should not be a thing. The human body is designed to repair itself. We get sick, we get better. You don't get a flu and then you have a flu forever. Like, oh, got the flu at 18. I guess I'm a chronic flu person. That's not supposed to work that way. You don't get a bruise, chronic bruise, So the idea that we're supposed to have these chronic diseases for life, it actually doesn't make sense when you study the human body and how cells work. What makes sense is that you get sick and then you get better. And if you're not getting better, you're doing something to stay sick. And that's what I teach people. And it's been powerful. I mean, I've been around for a while now. And if somebody said to me the other day, I Googled you intensively before I made an appointment with you because I see people online the way we are right now. She goes, I can't find one negative comment. And I said, well, I'm not popular enough yet because I don't have enough haters because I need, that.
Bring it on. Yeah.
But it says a lot. I work really hard to help people, and this is the truth, and it works. And that's what people have. Every time I post something, I get all these comments. You saved my life. My kidneys were normal in 1 week. My pain's gone. Just because of information. And most of it I teach for free. I mean, the books I put out there so people can have it, but I teach all the information. I write my books for free online too, because I know what it's like. This information has to get out there so we can stop people from not only suffering and dying that don't need to, but people losing people they love from death and disease, but they don't need to suffer from. So I think it's all that. I'm extremely passionate. You ask me a question, I'll talk for 10 minutes, you see?
Well, you're totally speaking my language. I mean, you know, especially with regard to mindset, I think that's where it all begins, because I think a lot of chronic illness starts with mind and behavior, but our behaviors stem from our state of mind. You know, we don't engage in negative self-sabotaging behaviors if we have a really healthy mindset.
100%.
So
I always tell my patients that, and my clients, like, I have a rapid recovery group where every day for 6 weeks I'm coaching you, and you can imagine, like, I am on top of people, right? And one of the things I tell them constantly, because they'll start to try to come up with their own ideas. I said, you're not in this group for ideas. You're in this group to follow what I'm telling you to do. So, and I always tell them, you know, your current state of health is the result of all of your thoughts and habits that you've had up until now. Everything you've done and thought and believed until now has created your current health. If you want to have a different body, a different health, a different life, you have to think differently and you have to do differently. That's how it works, right? So it's 100% true. And that's why mindset's so important. Also, you know, as a psychiatrist, what I've seen over the years is people who have depression, anxiety, trauma, they have far more pain and a higher perception of pain. And, you know, current research I've looked at has shown people who've experienced trauma in their life have a 40 to 60% higher chance of having autoimmune disease. So it truly is that, you know, and those things are actually inflammatory. It's not, you know, I was telling someone the other day he goes, you know, I don't think I want to do mindset stuff. I just want to work on my diet. You know, it sounds too much like woohoo stuff. I said, I'm not a woohoo. I'm a scientist. I'm telling you that stress is inflammatory directly. We can see it in the bloodstream. When somebody dies, a person in mourning has inflammatory markers that shoot up like somebody with autoimmune disease. In fact, people who are in mourning often develop autoimmune disease during that time period. So it truly is a link that's not just in the realm of people who are, you know, meditating under trees, but there truly is a link between our mindset and how we treat ourselves emotionally and our physical manifestation of disease. And that's what Goodbye Autoimmune Disease is about, is that if you truly want to get your health back physically, you're going to have to get it back emotionally as well.
Awesome. Yeah, super cool. And like I said, totally my language. I'd like to know about your, you know, diagnosis of lupus. I guess you said you had it for 12 years, but you've been free of it for 14. So I guess it was 26 years ago you were diagnosed, if I'm doing the math correctly.
Look at you go. I wouldn't do math this early. So yeah, I was diagnosed at 16. At the time that I was diagnosed, so lupus is an autoimmune disease where your body, your immune system stops recognizing your own organs and starts to attack them as if it was an invading bacteria or a virus. You know, normally a bacteria comes in, your immune system says, that shouldn't be here, kill it, gets rid of it. Well, with lupus, your immune system, because of chronic inflammation, the wiring is faulty. You know, there's you can just imagine wires with sparks flying out. They're not operating properly, and your immune system starts to attack your organs. Now, a very common manifestation of this disease is nephritis or lupus inflammation of the kidneys, and that's what I had. So by the time I was diagnosed, I mean, I thought it was bad enough being 16 and having arthritis and rashes and migraines. But I was diagnosed and told that I had stage 4 kidney failure, and they gave me 6 months before I ended up dead or on dialysis if I didn't do chemotherapy. Now, 26 years ago, chemotherapy was experimental. Now it's a common thing, and the reason they use it is the side effect of chemotherapy, which is usually used for cancer, right? It's a poison that's supposed to kill cells that are growing. And so since cancer cells grow quickly, they die more than other cells. That's the way it works. So the side effect of chemotherapy is that it suppresses or shuts down the immune system. And so the scientists at the time were thinking, what if we intentionally shut off someone's immune system, like when you reboot your computer? Let's shut it off and see if when it comes on again, it works better. And at the time, it was experimental. So currently, when people get chemo, it's about, you know, it could be a few treatments, maybe a month or two, but I had chemotherapy for 2 years straight. I was
You're talking about methotrexate or?
No, cytoxan chemotherapy.
Okay.
Yeah, IV chemotherapy. So 2 years straight, I was getting IVs once a month of chemo in addition to super high dose prednisone. I had 6 other pills I took every morning, just trying to survive. And during that time, I mean, I was 16, and my family is just incredible. And my mother especially, she just kept me focused. Like, you are not a patient. You are not a disease sufferer. You are someone who's going to finish high school and get into college and do all these things. And so she kept me really focused on my purpose, so that, you know, I took my pills and then I didn't think about my disease for the rest of the day. You know, I thought about, well, I have an AP biology test on Monday, but I have chemo Friday, so I need to study at this time so I can be ready. And so, you know, because of her, I really just delved into science and education and all the things that were in my power, instead of really embracing illness. And, you know, back then we didn't have cell phone cameras, you know, nobody was tracking their daily stuff. Like, my parents took the camera out for my graduation and my birthday, you know, so it actually breaks my heart nowadays when I see Instagrammers with showing pictures of their IVs and their pills. And I don't think we should focus on our illnesses. We have to focus on our purpose. And so for me, my purpose was, I don't know how long I'm going to live, because at 16 to have stage 4 kidney failure already, not a good sign. So I figured, well, none of us know how long we'll live, so I'm just going to live with as much purpose and passion as I can, and you know, in my family's service. So I studied and I worked hard. I graduated in the top 10 of my class in high school in spite of being sick. Got a scholarship to Carnegie Mellon, and just dove into the sciences, did genetic research there, absolutely loved it. And then decided I was still alive. And I actually stayed, you know, I got into remission right at the end of high school. So 2 years of chemotherapy. I had my last chemo a week before I started college, and I was in remission. And, you know, remission was, I still had lupus. I still had protein in my urine, which they told me I would have forever because of the damage to my kidneys. I still had positive markers for, you know, positive ANA, dsDNA, all the markers you have for autoimmune, but I wasn't currently dying from the disease. That's what remission is in autoimmune disease. You have it, but you're stable. I still took some steroids. I still took some medications for pain when I needed them, for my arthritis or migraines, but I was done with chemo. That was very exciting. And I actually was able to maintain that through college. It was medical school that got me sick again. And that's when I started getting double vision. I passed out in one of the clinics, and it turned out that I was sending blood clots into my brain because the lupus had caused the development of an antibody that causes blood clots. So it's called antiphospholipid antibodies. And so that's when I started giving myself daily injections of blood thinners. So at that time I was 26, 27. And, you know, at that point I was already a few months away from becoming a doctor. So I knew that I was in big trouble. I was told I could never have children. I would have a major stroke or kidney failure. You know, with lupus, pregnancy is very dangerous. And I knew I'd probably be disabled by my 40s. But my hope was, in the time I have, I'm going to serve as much as I can. You know, I'm going to do what I can. And I thought, well, I've figured out how to have a good life in spite of disease. Maybe I can help others do the same.
Yeah.
And so
Sounds like that purpose was kind of guiding you and driving you all throughout.
Yeah, I live like this. I just get pulled around by my heart, and I just.
I was like, by your white coat, or is that?
No, the heart. I can't reach into
the heart is there.
Heart, so I pull the shirt. Okay, so you know. No, yeah. I just have always been very. I just have always been very heart-centered. My parents taught me, you know, if you do when you look for a career, do the thing that you would do for free that makes your heart happy. You'll always find your way. So I was raised that way, and this is where it took me to. And that was, you know, at that point, you know, when I graduated, I was I was just about 28, and that's when I met my husband, where my whole world went in a whole new direction. I mean, I'd already been going towards a life of wanting to be a physician, wanting to help others, but also knowing I was going to do that as someone with a disease and eventually disability. And then I met my husband, who wanted to marry a sick woman, which is remarkable in itself, you know, to have, you know, he's 28 years old. To this day, the most gorgeous man I've ever met. I remember going out on dates with him where I'd walk into a club and I'd have to fight the bridal shower party out of the way who would surround him, you know? So, I mean, he could have been with anybody he wanted to. And he said he'd rather just, you know, spend whatever time he could with me, even if it was a short life, than live a whole long life with anybody else. So I was, you know, I'd always planned for the white coat. I never planned for a white dress. I never thought that was a possibility for me because of, you know, it's not that I was desirable, but, you know, I also understood, you know, wanting to marry someone who can't have your kids, that you're going to have to take care of when they come disabled, is not necessarily a life plan for most guys, you know? So, but what happened was, my husband also lives by his heart. He at the time was a personal trainer. He had his own personal training studio, and he had a master's degree in health promotion, but also computer science from Carnegie Mellon. And he applied his computer science brain to fitness. And he realized that, everyone who does the same diet and exercise should get the same result. It shouldn't be some people get results, some don't. It didn't make sense to his mind because he's very mathematical, and he said, we're all built of cells. It should give that. So he designed a diet for me because I asked him to create a diet for me to get fit for our wedding. I was eating hospital food, great way to get fat and sick, So I said, we were going to just elope, tiny wedding in Maui, but Maui, I wanted to look amazing. And he did it in a way where he would nourish people to get their metabolism to be fast. And then when you add exercise to a fast metabolism, you lose weight easily. So he designed a diet for me. Now, the diet that he was using at the time, this is, 14 years ago, it's similar to current paleo diets, actually. But it was super focused on raw vegetables, water, high water intake, omega-3 intake. And then he told people to eat wild meat, wild caught fish or free range meat. But I'd been a vegetarian since I was a kid. I loved animals. I didn't want to eat animals, but I lived on cheese, eggs, and processed food. So it's not a healthy diet, but didn't eat meat. So I did a plant-based version of it. And for the first time in my life, I was actually 100% plant-based or vegan. I didn't eat, because he said, all the saturated fat from those eggs and cheese, you're never going to get a fast metabolism. So I got rid of that, focused on the vegetables, didn't do the meat part of it. And, within 4 months, I went from a size 11 to a size 3. I was ripped. And for the first time since I was 16, I didn't have arthritis. I didn't have migraines. I had tons of energy. I was an intern working 30-hour shifts, and I would go to the gym after my shift because I still had energy, where people without lupus didn't have that. And right before the wedding, I went and got my blood test done in California. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I had just moved to California for my residency at UCLA Harbor. And my tests were negative for lupus. And that was 14 years ago. And at the time, we didn't know why. I mean, the only thing I changed was my diet. And I just graduated medical school. So if diet was important for disease, I would have learned it. So it couldn't have been my diet. Right? So we didn't know. Maybe I'm in love. I don't know. But I was in love for 6 months and I didn't have normal labs. And then I changed my diet 3 months later. My labs are normal. So it wasn't until I had my first son 4 years later, because I'd been healthy for 4 years, normal labs, no issues. And I finally did decide to have a baby. Still didn't have lupus. And that's when my husband and I realized, something was different here, because I should be sick. All the doctors are saying I was high risk and all this stuff, but I wasn't. I was healthy. And that's when we decided to go back and look at, is there research that explains what happened to me? And what we realized, looking at cellular biology, how the immune system works, how nutrition and different types of foods affect the immune system, that we'd accidentally created the most anti-inflammatory diet possible for the human body. So over the past decade, we started testing it. We spent about a year, really isolating the components that were essential to my recovery. We tested it for about a year, had the same results in other people. And over the past decade, we've been able to apply it to people all over the world. I now work the way I see you. I don't have a land practice anymore, because in a given day, I see someone in India, Australia, somewhere in the States, and people all over the world are just following what we tell them to do and eliminating their disease. And, that's why we also teach a lot for free, because we feel like we've been given this chance to grow old together, where I'm healthy. And we have 2 beautiful boys now that are healthy and strong, and they've never eaten a bite of meat or cheese in their life. They've grown up drinking green smoothies out of their bottles. And, my 10-year-old hasn't had a cold since he was 2. Like, we have had the opportunity to see what the immune system really is supposed to look like and what people's health is supposed to look like. So it's turned into an extraordinary mission, one that I never expected. I never planned to write best-selling books. I wanted to work with the homeless. I just wanted to work with the homeless, help the chronically ill, hope to help people have a better life than they did before, or have less suffering and all that stuff based on what I'd learned. But it feels like I was kind of pushed into a whole nother realm that I'd never expected, but it's extremely gratifying.
Very cool. I'd like to, first of all, just thank you for sharing the story. And I can tell that you've done it a lot, and you've obviously written it, and it's very,
well, I lived it, so it's easy to tell. It's my story.
It comes through you very beautifully. I'd like to back up to, age 16, and like this autoimmune condition. Where did it come from? We were talking about mindset and behavior and habits, and, the disease that you have now is the sum of those habits. So what was your life like that maybe led to developing an autoimmune condition?
Absolutely. So, when people ask me when they got sick, what caused it, I don't think there's one cause. I think it's more like a storm. You know, there's all these different things that are in play that create the weather that you have right now. So for me, I actually was emotionally very healthy. I was raised by, my mom's an immigrant here. She was born in Poland after World War II. Her parents were Holocaust survivors, and her parents helped raise me because back then there was no special daycare. It was grandparents. And so I was raised by a family that said, if you wake up and you're free and you're here, you're lucky. So even being sick, I've always felt lucky. I've always felt very happy. But the only emotional traumas, I had some emotional traumas. Both of my grandparents died when I was 14. Both my grandfathers died at 14. So as I mentioned, mourning can increase inflammation. I actually took care of my mother's father when he was dying. I stayed with my grandmother and helped take care of him. But otherwise, I was very healthy emotionally, but I didn't grow up eating well. One, I wasn't breastfed, and I love you, Mom. It wasn't your fault. Her doctors back then in the 70s, doctors were saying, hey, we invented something better than nature. Now we're starting to learn that all the things we created better than nature, not better.
That's not possible. Yeah.
No, nature actually works better than all the stuff we've invented. Hey, I get people to reverse autoimmune disease with kale. So I know this now, but her doctor said, formula is even better than breast milk. So I was never breastfed. I grew up eating tons of processed food, Chef Boyardee, macaroni and cheese. I grew up in a family, again, where people who starved during World War II. So my grandmother's thing was, love is food on a level, I hear people who were raised by those who were in the Depression, the Great Depression, had the same bringing up that I did, was, just if you're hungry, we're going to give you all the stuff that makes you happy. So it was tons of junk food, even though I still ate, I liked fruits and vegetables, but I ate tons of processed foods every day. Diet Coke was the drink of the house. So I think that for me, the biggest factor in developing disease at young was my diet. Even though my diet was better than most of my friends, I have the genetic predisposition to autoimmune disease, and I had a pretty poor diet. I was not athletic, really. I was on the volleyball team, but I sat bench. I wasn't really an athlete. And so that was, I think that was the greatest factor. Although, like I said, I did have recent events of losing people that I loved as well that could have set up the stage for it or started to trigger. Also, at that age, hormones are starting to float around. So lupus usually shows up in people who are fairly young and often shows up in either teenagers going through hormonal changes and pregnant women. Mm-hmm. So I think that was most likely my storm that caused it back then. And the thing is, with autoimmune disease, once it gets rolling, if you don't intervene by changing those things, it becomes chronic. But what I've shown in my own life and others is that even if it's been chronic for over a decade, if you just fix the preceding issues, it'll go away. So for me, when I changed my diet, that's all I changed. And everything went away. I was also the happiest I'd ever felt in my life. I was at my first choice of residency with my dream job. I was still alive and I became a doctor. That was like the big goal of my life. So I was so excited. I moved from Pittsburgh to California, and not to just Pittsburgh, but I was living by the beach, And on top of that, I was in love with the most incredible person and planning my wedding. So I think emotionally, psychologically, it was a good time. Even though I've always been a very happy person, and most people never have known I was even sick because I never talked about it. I just was always focused on being happy and enjoying my life. But I was definitely not having any traumas at the time. And then I changed my diet and everything changed. So, it was, I think that was for me the biggest issue. But the reason that mindsets come so much into play for me is that over the years, what I found is I could meet somebody who is otherwise happy, who becomes sick. I change their diet, and within 2 months, they're completely healthy again. Sometimes 4 weeks, all their symptoms are gone. And then I'd meet people with depression, anxiety, trauma, and it changed their diet, and things start to get better. And then they have a panic attack, and then they get worse. And then they visit their parents, and then they're sicker for 2 weeks because their parents are a bad issue. That just happened in one of my groups. Someone was symptom-free, saw her parents, had a terrible time, 2 weeks of pain, right? So I started seeing this happen, and I realized that for many people, if we don't fix the psychological side of it, they're never going to get the result. And it, because it's this up and down where my diet's getting rid of inflammation, but my stress is creating more. And then, and it's just, So I was drawn to psychiatry because of what I'd seen as a medical student, watching people who, I was going to go into rheumatology originally, made sense, lupus, right? But in my training in the hospital, I just watched person after person where someone who had a devastating diagnosis but was surrounded by family and smiling would end up leaving the hospital when we never thought that'd be possible because of their diagnosis. And someone with an infection in their foot who should be getting better very quickly is stuck in the hospital forever, but never had any visitors, depressed and sad every day. And I started to realize that the way people felt had a greater impact on their recovery than their diagnosis. And I realized that as a medical student, I've always been very connected and observant about things. And that led me towards the path of psychiatry, because I realized, wow, I realized about myself that one of the reasons I was successful in spite of my illness was because of my positive mindset and focus, and never letting my disease become my identity, and always finding reasons to be grateful. That was one of the reasons that I felt good in spite of my diagnosis, where other people with my diagnosis were sitting home on disability. And so I realized if I could impart that on people with chronic illness, I can give them a life worth living in spite of being sick. But what it ended up being was my experience as a psychiatrist combined with what happened to me with the nutrition and my medical training all came together to provide and create these healing programs that now can get people their health back in 4 to 6 weeks sometimes if they're doing the program with me, because I look at all of those factors together.
Super cool. I would like to talk more about this identification with illness, and something that I wholeheartedly agree with you on. And it seems like you are really connected with that being a really big part of your healing process and the healing process that you witness in people. In my experience, people have this kind of pride with their illness, like on Instagram, for example, a lot of autoimmune warriors, a lot of chronic disease warriors, and they're just like, yeah, this is me, I'm battling through, like we were talking about before. They're taking photos of their IVs, and they're really wrapped up in their diagnosis and their treatment process. So I'm curious how you pierce through that and how you separate someone from their condition. I know obviously that's something that they have to do themselves, but in my experience, sometimes when I invite them to consider separating themselves from their condition, they feel a little triggered, or like, but this is my life and this is me and you have no idea. So how do you approach these kind of situations?
I approach it head on. So in my rapid recovery group, it's an online group where I work with people 30 at a time max for 6 weeks every day. And we attack their nutrition, but also their mindset, self-care, all that kind of stuff. And this is one of the things I focus on the most is there's an assignment in that group called letting go. And I have them work on this. I say, in order to create a new life for yourself, you have to let go of the old one. You have to let go of the pain. You have to let go of the disability, and you have to let go of the diagnosis, because whatever we identify as ourself, we would never let go of that. We don't let go of who we are, right? If you, if someone has, a certain religion or something, right? It's like, I am Jewish, I am Catholic, I am, right? You don't let go of I ams usually, unless something really big happens. We identify with something, and that's part of who we are. So if you say, I am a lupus warrior, I am a diabetic, I am a cancer patient, there is a part of you psychologically that holds on to that and will sabotage your efforts to get rid of it. So we have a whole section that we work on that. So number one is I work on, oftentimes I'll really dig into somebody if I see them sabotage themselves, right? So, if you're doing that program with me, you literally, there's my alarm there. But if you join a program like that, so think about that, you invest in a program where you're going to get as healthy as you can in 6 weeks. Why would you eat cookies? Why would you have a glass of wine if that goes against what you said you wanted? And so what I always explain to people is, there is no, there's nothing like lazy. There's nothing wrong with you. You are motivated, right? Everybody's motivated. But if you're doing something that sabotages yourself, there's a part of you that's motivated to stay sick. That's what self-sabotage is. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It is that you have motivation to get better. That's a part of you that's eating raw vegetables and drinking green smoothies and doing your exercise. And then there's a part of you that's motivated to stay sick. So let's find out what that is. And I'll have them do assignments. Like one of the assignments that I'll do is write to me and tell me about what's good about staying sick. And it's fascinating what people come up with. They're shocked because they'll be like, nothing. And I said, that's not true, because if that was true, you wouldn't be doing these behaviors. Tell me what's good about being sick. And all of a sudden, it all comes out. I'm used to it. Nobody expects anything from me. I'm afraid that if I get better, people will expect me to work again, or I won't have a reason to say no to social situations. I'm not going to be a part of this group anymore, that, you know, I get to wear purple shirts and show up at events and be a part of this thing. And if I don't have it anymore, that I lose my community. All of these things and fears come up. Then we have something to work on. I'm like, okay, I get it. And if you hold on to these things, you're holding on to your disease and you will never let yourself heal. So we do a combination of letting go of those thoughts and feelings and fears, and at the same time focusing on your why, which is one of the first assignments. Why do you even want to get better? What do you want for your life? And I have them say it in present tense. Like, tell me what it's like now that you're healed. In present tense, I want you to say, I am, you know, and they have to speak it out. You know, now that I am healthy, I'm inspiring all of my family to get healthy. I'm running in marathons. I'm chasing after my grandkids without having to lay down on the couch. I am. And I let them feel how good that feels. And so we do that combination of really embracing how good it's going to be to get better, and then a constant process of letting go of all those other things. It's still going to come up, but you got to let go of it. As long as you are, I am a lupus patient, you also won't be, I am healthy. You have to choose which one you want. So it's a constant process. And a lot of people find that they go back and forth, where they're going hard, and then they go, I'm feeling so good. It's the best day I ever had. I can't believe it. I'm feeling so great. And then they eat chips at night. And then they're like, I ate the chips because I was afraid. I started to feel so good. And then I thought my husband's going to expect me to go back to work, and I freaked out, you know? So a lot of it is just becoming, I make people aware of it. And again, I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm really good at this, on helping people figure out what is it that you're holding on to. And I do this even, you know, when I go speak at events, I love seeing a sea of purple shirts, and those, you know, purple's the color for lupus awareness. But then I'll talk to them and I'll say, hey guys, I love that you're here to support each other, but don't make this your team, like a sports team. You know, I don't want you to hold on to this. Like, I am a lupus warrior. Be a lupus conqueror and let it go. You know, let it, release it. Wear purple because you like the color. But don't, you know, don't make this your team where this is who you are forever, because as soon as you decide that, you're deciding to stay sick. So it's difficult. And that's why, you know, truly healing is a psychological process, because again, like I said in the beginning, you know, all your thoughts and habits are creating the health you have right now. You know, if one of your habits is to identify strongly with illness, if your entire Instagram following is because you're talking about how much it sucks to have lupus, what's going to happen if you don't have lupus anymore, right? You have to be willing to be that inspiration for people. And when you do that, I mean, think of the lives that you can share. And actually, I use that as a good motivator for people, that people who aren't motivated for themselves, I use inspiration as one of them. I mean, think about how many people you can help. Maybe not in your own family if they don't listen to you, but out there in the world, if you can conquer this and let it go.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And I think it's obviously essential when we're talking about the healing process. I love what you said about, you know, stepping into something new. You can't be that and this. You got to be one or the other. So it seems like it's just a continual process of letting go and stepping into a new life, letting go of a disease. And it's not something that just happens and then it's like, okay. Yeah, right.
Every time it pops up, you let it go. So you go, oh, I'm feeling really anxious about this. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to remember why I'm doing this again, and I'm going to focus on the good behavior, you know?
Yeah. So I'd love to shift toward food, of course, which is, you know, all of this is my passion. We're like I said a few times, we're speaking the same language, mindset, food.
Well, that's why you wanted to interview me.
That's why. Well, I knew this would be a great connection, and I knew we'd be on the same page. Yeah. But with regard to food, obviously that was everything was good. Your mindset was clear. You were, you know, in love, in a good place mentally, emotionally. And then with the support of your fiance at the time, or you know, cultivated this new way of eating. But it seems like you approached it more like a weight loss kind of temporary thing. Yeah, it was like, but it became a lifestyle, it sounds like. So could you describe what that lifestyle is? It sounds like just a plant-based, whole food, vegan sort of way, but anything to really, you know, define it more definitively?
100%. Yeah. Well, that's one thing that's important to me, is that things are very simple and direct. It's why I write things out in steps and try to make them so that anybody who, you know, reads one of my books or comes to any of my talks, if they go, okay, I can follow these steps and this is how I get healthy. So I don't want to be vague about it at all. The nutrition plan that works to rapidly reverse diseases, it really focuses on one, the most nourishing foods on the planet, right? So the most nourishing foods on the planet that have the most vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and all the different parts of the plant that actually work as medicine in our body comes from raw foods, first of all, and specifically the darker leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables. So things like broccoli and kale and cauliflower and cabbage, spinach, all those different kinds of things. And so when I was looking at, what I do is I call it rapid recovery. So I'm originally from New York. I like things fast. I don't want to wait around. Don't waste my time. I'm not patient. How can we do this fast, right? So for people who want to go slow, they can go one step at a time. But when I do rapid recovery, it means you're working with me every day for 4 or 6 weeks so that you can dramatically be better, and some people entirely better in that short period of time. So if I have very little time with you, I'm not wasting any bites of food on something that has only a little bit of vitamins and minerals in it, because it's not going to give you fast results. I'm going to use the most potent, right? So the cruciferous vegetables and the dark leafy greens are extremely potent in terms of how much medicine they have. So we focus primarily on those and other raw vegetables. And so, for example, in a rapid recovery program, I'll start people out on 8 cups a day, packed cups, not like cups with air between the leaves, 8 cups a day of, leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables. And then as much as they want after that of other vegetables that they like, raw vegetables, peppers and tomatoes, and they can have unlimited avocados, which is the one thing that people fall in love with. They're like, okay, if I can have guacamole, I can eat raw vegetables. You just dip it, it's good, right? But we do that. Then that's going to give people the tools that the cells use to repair themselves. We need to have enough nutrients to fix themselves. Most people are chronically ill because the number one vegetable consumed in our country is ketchup. So if you are starved of minerals, specifically people are starved of minerals, which you get in vegetables, but some are vitamins and minerals if they're not taking a vitamin pill. If you're starved of that, it doesn't matter how obese you are or how much burgers you eat, you're going to be sick because your body simply can't repair itself. So that's where we get those tools. Now, when you look at optimizing the metabolism to get people to heal as fast as possible and making the anti-inflammatory immune system work better, that's omega-3s. So omega-3 fatty acids must be eaten. Our body can't make them. And they are the key ingredient that creates our anti-inflammatory immune system. So we get our inflammatory immune system from omega-6, but omega-6 comes from oils, it comes from meat products, it comes from eggs, it comes from dairy, and it comes from nuts. So most people have an extraordinary amount of omega-6 in their body. And so therefore they have a super overactive inflammatory immune system. So, there's been research done that suggests that maybe a 9-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 would be optimal, anywhere from 9-to-1 to 1-to-1. But most Americans, at least tested 20 years ago, had a ratio of 40-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3, and probably worse today because nutrition's gotten worse in the past decade.
And I've heard that 4-to-1 is really optimal.
That would be amazing. But, there was a study done where people with a 9-to-1 ratio in Japan had very few chronic diseases. So, anywhere in that realm would be fantastic. But when you're at the 40-to-1 range, you're just making inflammation all the time and you have almost no omega-3s. So omega-3s, I focus on getting them from flax and chia seeds or cold pressed flax oil if the seeds bother people's stomach. And what we do is we really flood the body with that. So the trick is, and this is why I get results really quickly, is if you eliminate the omega-6 sources, right? So you get rid of meat and dairy, eggs, you minimize any nuts, you get rid of all the oils, right? And you're doing tons of raw vegetables, specifically those really healing ones that I mentioned, and then you're doing high doses of omega-3s, you're going to throw your body into an anti-inflammatory pathway because there's nothing creating inflammation anymore. And you're giving your cells everything that they use to fight inflammation and to optimize the anti-inflammatory immune system. And then the other key ingredient that most people are missing is water. So water is involved in every chemical reaction that's going to eliminate inflammation. And most people are severely dehydrated. And what I found in my programs over the years is that people who get less than 96 ounces a day don't get rapid recovery. So when you think about the goal from the FDA is 64 ounces, most people have like 32 or less. And for rapid disease reversal, you need 96 to 128. You can see why most people are sitting around sick all the time.
Not only that, they're also drinking 4 cups of coffee and 3 glasses of wine.
I did too. I was a medical student. I did not think a drink without caffeine was worth drinking. Like, what?
Yeah.
Yep. And meanwhile, people who drink water have more energy. Water is dehydration is the number one cause of constipation and headaches which those are huge, big money makers in terms of the pharmaceutical industry, headaches and constipation, and the number one cause except for sleep. So when people are of exhaustion, right? So if someone's exhausted and they're getting enough sleep, it's always that they're malnourished or dehydrated, always. So, I mean, I'm working with someone right now for a 4-week program, and she said, I feel like I've been run over by a Mack truck. I said, get your water up, give me 20 more ounces of water. And she did it, and she goes, oh my God, I feel energy. Yeah, but people don't think about energy from
and it's like, you know, I have a hard time. It's like people are coming to the doctor and I'm telling them to drink water, you know, it's like, but these basic things. Yeah.
And it works. When you combine those 3 things, magic happens. You know, well, it's actually 6 steps. The first 3 steps are eliminating the stuff making you sicker. If you want to heal, stop getting sicker. That's a good first step.
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So start by not getting sicker. So that would be, you know, stop eating animal products, stop eating oil, stop eating processed foods. Those are the first 3 things. And then optimize your body's ability to heal by giving it the tools it uses to get better. And that's the thing, is our bodies are always ready to heal at any given moment. But we've got all these workers sitting in our bodies with no tools. It's like if you hired a construction crew to fix your house, but you didn't give them any tools, they're just gonna be sitting around. They want to work, they can't work, right? Then you give them the tools they need and they get to work so fast, and people are dizzy from how fast the results are. They can't believe it. And that's, you know, when I first started doing that, that was a lot of the pushback I got was, 1, you can't cure lupus. And 2, it's just not possible that you could have an illness for that long and it just disappears that quickly. Now I don't have to defend myself, because I'll post something and someone puts a negative comment, and then 20 people after that go, nope, I did this program and I'm lupus free now and my rheumatoid arthritis gone. Yeah. So I don't have to do anything anymore because the truth is out, and people are sharing it, and it really does work. And it still blows my own mind as a scientist and a doctor. I mean, I put 12 years of my life to get an MD just to find out that the pharmacy with an FARM is more powerful than the pharmacy with a PHARM, you know, that
so much more powerful, so much less expensive.
And it actually reverses diseases. Medicines don't reverse diseases. The medicines I took kept me alive, and I'm not anti-medicine. I'm a medical doctor. I use medicine, but I use it as a tool to keep people alive and healthy enough so that I can use nutrition to then reverse the problem, and they come off medicine again. Even as a psychiatrist, an antidepressant so you don't kill yourself, and you can focus enough to then start changing your diet and your lifestyle. And then once you get better, you come off the medicine. I just saw someone yesterday, you know, she was taking antidepressant. She was super anxious. She couldn't do anything, took the medicine. And then in the meantime, we've been working on meditation and green smoothies for nutrition and all this stuff. And now she's weaning off of it. She's almost completely off of it because she changed her lifestyle, her mindset, her habits. Now she doesn't need that pill anymore. Mm-hmm. Whereas I was taught in medical school, people who need antidepressants forever. No, that doesn't make sense.
Well, and for sure, the pharmaceutical companies want us to, you know, be lifelong customers, right?
Well, their best clients are people who are chronically ill, not healthy and not dead.
Right.
You're chronically ill.
Yeah. Please don't die. Please take this medicine for many more years to come. Yeah. So I'm curious how you respond to other approaches to address autoimmunity. I know that there's a huge autoimmune paleo kind of thing, and there's like, you know, I've heard a lot of people even talking about like a carnivore thing and just eliminating all plant foods to somehow support the body and not dying. However, this is anecdotal stuff, I think at best, but how do you entertain these kind of conversations if maybe a client or patient you had, you know, is like, oh, well, you know, I've been doing this autoimmune paleo thing and it's kind of, you know, kept me stable.
First of all, that doesn't happen in my practice, because what happens is people come to me who did paleo or keto first, and then they went into kidney failure, or they ended up in the ICU, because, you know, animal products are inflammatory. They are driving your omega-6 pathway, and they're creating devastating amounts of inflammation that trigger disease. So I've had clients who came to me who, I had one woman who did paleo to do CrossFit. First time in her life, she had abs and got a lupus at the same time. You know, so she was eating like eggs and chicken every meal, you know, and more meat than she ever had in her life. Got lupus within 2 weeks of doing, I put her on entirely raw foods, just healing foods. And in 2 weeks, all of those symptoms were gone. So, so number one, I have a lot of experience, so I don't have to entertain theories. I'm in a very unique position that way, right? Is that, you know, when someone says to me, well, my other doctor told me to do a paleo approach, what do you think? And I'll say, you know what, why don't you choose? Ask your doctor how many people they have actually gotten to be lupus free on their plan. and then I'll tell you, I'll show you mine, right? So, and the thing is, all these other people, they don't have that. They might have some stuff where someone felt better, but they can't show you negative labs, right? Which I can. And so when I teach my book by Lupus. I teach it online as well for free every 2 months. I actually just finished 13 hours of teaching that for free. And one of the things I talk about is this, that every step you take in the direction of eating healthier will create more health in your body. So for example, one of the things that creates inflammation is processed foods. If you do a paleo approach, paleo eliminates processed foods and it eliminates dairy. Both of those are extremely inflammatory. So if your diet was largely meat, dairy, processed foods, and very little vegetables, and you move to a paleo approach where you're eating meat and vegetables and no dairy and processed foods, I expect your health to get better.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction.
100%. So for many people where their main issue was their cheese addiction or processed food addiction, they feel dramatically better on that approach, especially if they don't eat much meat. But then I see folks who embrace the meat. I had a client from Australia that he got lupus and was in terrible shape. His kidneys were failing, hair's falling out. And he read the paleo approach. He went, oh, yay, I love meat. So he started eating more to eat them, fire up the Barbie, let's do it. He started
some good news about our bad habits.
Right. And so he rushed into his worst habit more. And what happened is his kidneys failed precipitously, really badly. All his other symptoms got worse. And then he found me. He told me first meeting, I don't want to be a vegan. I live in Australia. I'm a hunter. I'm a fisherman. I'm surrounded by people like me. I don't want to be a vegan, but I don't want lupus more. So, okay. And same thing, we did my approach. Within 2 months, every single lab was negative. Normal kidneys. He was back to his fighting weight, which most people think that if you're eating raw foods, you're just going to waste away into bones. No, you get healthier. You can lift weights. You can be strong. So his hair grew back. His kidneys functioning normally. All of his immune markers went back to normal again. So I don't need to argue theories because I have results. And that's one of the big things for me. Every time someone says, oh, my doctor says this, I say, great, how many people have they healed with that approach? Oh, I don't think they have anybody. Okay, so why are we talking about this? Let me tell you what to do. And I don't mean that in any kind of narcissistic way. It's just, this is one area where I know what I'm doing. And I also am extremely passionate about it because I care deeply for people's lives. And it's frustrating that there are other people, especially medical professionals, who are reading something on Instagram or Facebook or Men's Health and using that as part of their practice when we're supposed to use evidence-based medicine. That is something that's drilled into our heads in medical school, is you teach evidence-based medicine. The evidence shows that a plant-based diet is the #1 healthiest diet for human beings. Evidence shows that people who eat meat have a 50% increased risk of dying from any cause over people who do not eat meat. And this is Harvard studies we're looking at. The World Health Organization identifies meat as a carcinogen like asbestos and cigarettes. So if you want to be 100% focused on the research and evidence-based medicine, then you better read the research and tell your patients that they should be eating a plant-based diet. Or in my opinion, that's malpractice because we're supposed to do no harm. So yeah, I'm.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's like, you want to look at research, the research supports this. You want to look at results, I can spend an entire day showing you results. And that beats anybody who has an idea about what they think Paleolithic people ate. And it definitely wasn't processed Paleolithic muffins that you can get in the store. But it's just not the case. And by the way, Paleolithic people average lived to their 30s. And they ate mostly vegetables. Mm-hmm. But
they got eaten by tigers and barely survived.
So I mean, for me, it's not an intellectual debate because this is all I do. But it's not a coincidence that the rise of the carnivore diet is happening at the same time that all of the evidence and excitement is showing that a plant-based diet is the #1 way, the only way to have optimal health, because there are industries at stake right now. The most profitable industries in our country are the pharmaceutical industry, the meat industry, and the dairy industry, right? So if you look at that, they don't, why is it that on the TV news you don't see, oh, Harvard study shows that eating meat increases your risk of death, blah, blah. Why doesn't it? Why? Because the first commercial you see after the news is beef's what's for dinner, got milk, right? So our system, while I love our country, I mean, I'm free here today and living my dream because my family immigrated here. In our society, money is what decides policy right now. So, which is why I'm online all the time, trying to teach this for free. So you can show I have no, big kale does not support me. I stay on the line 13 hours teaching this class and answering I started a class at 6 in the afternoon, 6 p.m. and I was online till 12:30 answering everybody's questions who came to the class, right? And I do that for free because people can see that I have nothing else to gain from it besides being there to help and support people. And I think that also helps my message get out there. You know, you read a study or something article that promotes a meat diet, look who wrote it and look where they're getting paid.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah.
Well, thank you for putting it all out there, and thanks for doing it so passionately and directly, and just there's no inhibitions, which is really refreshing.
I'm a New Yorker, and like I said, I lived this life, and it aggravates me. I mean, it's not even aggravated; it angers me that there's information out there that's killing people who are trying to do better. There's actually people out there who go, maybe there is a way to fight autoimmune disease with diet. That's wonderful. And then they pick the wrong one and they get sicker. Oh yeah, that gets me.
Speaking of that, one more food related question. Curious your thoughts on medical medium, like a high fruit. I trust that you are familiar with the medical medium approach that is.
But I don't really know his stuff. I actually don't delve into other people's programs because I am.
Well, I can tell you, yeah.
In mine,
it's a whole food, plant-based, higher fruit, fruit focused. But I've heard you and make your smoothies, and it's like, a lot of people make a fruit smoothie that's just garnished with greens.
Yeah.
So you're green focused, and fruit is part of it, but not the focus.
Oh, well, yeah, what we found is that, so again, everything I teach is results based. I can tell you about research and stuff, but it's really not my focus because research can be skewed and people can, interpret things in different ways. And so what I would care about is results. So what I've found over the past decade of doing results, and realize, I have a rapid recovery group now where every 2 months, 30 people go through the group. I have results on a larger scale than anyone you could ever meet. Like, it's just constant. And that's in addition to all the other people that I see, on appointments and stuff. So I have an enormous amount of people that I've worked with over the years. And what I've found is that if you do it with only vegetables, guaranteed really fast results. If you have 25% of your diet or less with fruit, you can get pretty good results, usually maybe 80-90% of the speed of the people who didn't do fruit at all. And then if you have too much fruit, more than 25%, the results are slower and sometimes don't happen. So when I look at that, I don't know the reason for it. And I don't like to make up theories because I think that just wastes people's time and theories can be wrong. I just know from my results that I can get people symptom-free, disease-free in a matter of weeks doing it with the vegetables, but fruits, it just slows down the whole process. I mean, if you look at fruits and compare them nutrient-wise to vegetables, I mean, it's nothing. There's no comparison. I mean, fruits have almost no minerals, which most people in the US, when they've tested them, are mineral deficient. Minerals come from soil. So what's going to have more minerals? The kale that's sitting in the soil, or the apple that's at the top of a tree where all the nutrients had to travel up the tree and down the branches and all the way down and into the fruit. Almost no minerals in an apple at all. And then you look at, it's also the reason why juices don't give the same result, because most of the minerals are deposited in the skin of things. And so you take out, you just get the pulp and the insides and just pull the sugar and water out. One, it's not a whole food anymore. Two, you took out the fiber, which has been shown to be instrumental in reversing autoimmune disease. Actually, they just did a study in mice where fiber alone got rid of markers in mice with lupus, right? So you eliminate fiber with juices, but specifically looking at fruit, the vitamin and mineral content is far lower. So can you get healthier eating fruit? Sure, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with fruit in terms of their health content when you're looking at just living a healthy diet. I don't limit fruit in someone who's just maintaining good health. You like fruit, enjoy it. My kids love fruit. My husband loves fruit. I actually prefer veggies myself, but I'm weird. I don't have a sweet tooth. But when it comes to rapid disease reversal, fruit slows it down. And so that's, again, I don't like theories.
You have done some like studies in your practice where you've
100%. Well, yeah, because when I'm doing rapid recovery, I've shown that I'm in a group and I'm telling them, hey, that's too much fruit. That's too much fruit. And then sure enough, we're at the end of the second week and they're like, why don't I have the same result as this other person? I said, look at their food, because I have them photograph their food every day. She's eating kale salads. The only fruit she has every day is in her smoothie. You're eating, a big fruit bowl as your snack still. And I told you that you're too high, and so it's just been results over and over again have shown that. And like I said, when you look at the actual, what they're made up of, you're not getting as much. You'd have to eat so much more fruit to get anywhere near the amount of power in terms of the nutrient level that you would get in vegetables. So it doesn't make sense when you look at the ingredients of them, and it doesn't make sense when you look at the actual results and what's happening in real people, which really matters more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I've had a lot of people come to me from his program. Like I said, I don't like to come on stuff I don't know about, because I haven't read his protocols, but I do have a lot of people who come to me from that program. And the only thing I know about it is celery juice. I have all these people and I'm like, all right, so you're sick. Tell me what you do. And every one of them drinks celery juice now. And I'm like, all right, why are you drinking celery? Oh, okay. So now I know. Okay. I know what book you read, but that's all I know about the program. But they still need my smoothies to get rid of their disease, But again, steps in the right direction. There are some people who are going to do the program you just described, and they're going to feel great because they left a meat, dairy, processed food diet. And then they're in a diet that's all plant-based, and maybe it has a lot of fruit, but they're also eating vegetables and other things. And, what I find is that there's always people who can do a certain thing and get a result, just like what my husband witnessed when he was going through his training to do exercise science. One person does this routine and it works, and the other person it doesn't, because they happen to be set up for that because of the other things going on and what they used to do. But I have people come to me all the time who are on plant-based diets and they still have autoimmune disease, or they just got autoimmune disease. Ellen Jaffe-Jones is a vegan athlete. You know her? She's a famous vegan athlete. She wrote Vegan on $4 a Day. She's a bestseller.
What's her sport?
Running. She runs marathons.
Oh, okay. I think I do know who she is. Yeah.
So she's been plant-based for like 20 years. And she used to do food demonstrations for current plant-based doctors that sell books and things. And I'm not getting, but she used to do food demos for them. Mm-hmm. And she taught people to eat a whole food plant-based diet, focusing on cooked vegetables, lots of beans and potatoes and cooked vegetables, no fats. Fats are bad for you, right? Which means no omega-3s, right? And so she actually was fit, running and all that stuff for decades. She was PETA's sexiest vegan over 50 or 60. I forget which one it was. But this past year, she got psoriasis. So Dr. Joel Kahn out in Detroit sent her to me. He just texted me, fix her. Which people from the Northeast, we all talk that way. Just get to the point. So she came to me, and within 2 weeks, her plaques were disappearing. Put her on the raw foods, focused on the vegetables, got rid of all that other cooked stuff, added super high doses of omega-3s, hydrated her, and within a couple of weeks, all those plaques disappeared. She actually wrote the 4 Goodbye Autoimmune Disease because, and I have a lot of people like that. Plant-based doctors come to me. It's always on the DL, if they get sick, because they know a plant-based diet is better, but then they don't understand why they get sick. And my expertise is looking at a cellular level. What are you doing that's going to augment your cells' ability to repair themselves and your anti-inflammatory immune system? And every time I see a plant-based person who's sick, they're not eating omega-3s, and they're not eating the raw foods. So it's, for some people, it's enough to just move into a plant-based diet or just move into a fruitarian diet or even a paleo diet. And then for others, it's just not going to be enough, or they do it wrong. Paleo, they eat too much meat, they're going to get sicker. Plant-based diet, they don't usually get sicker. But what I told Ellen was, you probably would have gotten psoriasis 20 years ago if you weren't vegan. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't enough to stop those genes because you ran out. You don't have an anti-inflammatory immune system. You don't have the raw foods, right?
So would you say that your approach, that is high raw, plenty of omega-3 fats and that sort of thing, the big green smoothie, would you say that that is more of a kind of temporary protocol that people transition back into more cooked foods, or is it something that you find that people need to sustain to remain disease-free?
Most people don't need to stay that way. I mean, even to this day, I'm high raw. So I eat, most of the day while I'm working, I'm just drinking my green smoothie and my water while I'm working. And then I usually have a cooked plant-based dinner, which could be tofu and broccoli, or bean soups or whatever, stuff like that. And then usually after dinner, I have a big salad, because once I eat cooked food, my energy level goes down. Once you get really into raw foods, the energy level is so through the roof that when you eat cooked food, it's like, oh, I know there's no vitamins that I got from that, right? So then I usually have like a big raw cabbage salad sometime later after that. So I find that staying on a high raw diet where at least 70% of your foods come from that, if you're going to have beans, have a giant salad and put beans on top. Don't have like a big bowl of rice and beans and then have a little tiny salad. Give yourself nutrition as your primary focus of your eating most of the time. And then for most folks, once they've been healthy 6 months to a year, tell them, yeah, you want to have something recreational once in a while. And I call it recreational because eating to get high is recreational eating. You want to have a vegan cupcake that has sugar in it. You want to have like a restaurant meal that had, a Beyond Burger, which is made of like, oils and things. Fine, you can do that once or twice a week as long as the rest of the time you're nourishing yourself and you're already healthy. What I find is when people mess up is they do hypernourishment for a couple of months, they feel amazing, and then they dive into vegan junk food and then their symptoms all come back. So as long as I usually do a step down approach where for people who really need to, some people, if you're already whole food plant-based and you're pretty healthy, then just add, I teach people how to make green smoothies where you get all of your raw foods and your omega-3s and most of your water right there, and you just drink that and add that to your current diet. You're going to stay healthy. You're going to be fabulous. But for people who are eating that way and you still have symptoms, you're going to want to transition into eating more of your foods coming from healing foods. And for some people, it needs to be entirely. I have people who join my group, for example, who, they're doing the smoothies plus plant-based foods, but they still have symptoms. And it's not until they work with me directly where we do the most extreme version of the diet where every bite is healing foods. I'm focused entirely on raw foods that suddenly within a couple weeks, everything goes away. So how extreme I tell people to go really depends on how they're doing now, add what you're missing versus all in. But ultimately, yeah, while some people choose to stay raw because they go, if this healed me, why would I ever do anything else? Most people can't wait to step down and have that cooked meal at the end of the day. And then the occasional junk food. And, people can sustain that. I sustain that. If someone offers me a vegan cupcake, I'll eat it, but I still had my smoothies all day long. So, I've been healthy 14 years. It's not going to hurt me. It causes damage always, but my body can heal that damage quickly. So.
Yeah. Well, we've covered a lot from mindset to food and so many nitty-gritty good things that we've brought forward in this conversation. And of course, your really touching story. I'm curious if you have just like any last words of recommendation or inspiration that you feel like might inspire some people, because it seems like a lot of people who follow you and who, read your books and do your thing, they're kind of DIY self-healers a lot of the time. So I'm curious if you've got any kind of an encouragement for those people who are out there doing it on their own.
Yeah, the most important thing is that every day that you try to do the best you can that day. One of the things I see to take people out of the game, and actually talk about this in my new book, is this kind of all or nothing approach to things where they feel like if they do something that messes it up, right? Some kind of self-sabotage. You ate that cupcake and you're not healthy yet, or you did something that took you out of the game, that people will then go, I guess I'm a failure, I messed it up, and then they'll just quit for the rest of the day. And I always tell people, right now is always the best time to do better. So even if your last meal was a burger, you can choose to have the salad now. You can make that change now because your cells are always waiting for you. It's never too late until you're dead to get yourself healthier than you are right now. So try to let go of that kind of all or nothing thinking that if you can't get it perfect right away, that you're not going to get there. Keep striving to make better steps and better decisions each day, even if it is literally 5 minutes ago you messed up. It's all right. Start again. And remember that this is about living your best life, that you need to focus on what you want most, which is truly to feel good and to live a life of purpose and happiness and joy and energy and not having pain, rather than focusing on what you want right now. Because I always tell people the nearest exit is always closer than the path through the issue. So it's easier to quit than it is to fight through the cravings and the urges. But you got to start talking to yourself and remind yourself that the thing you're craving right now, that's addiction. And that's going to take you away from what you want most in your life. And that's where you need to be focused.
Great stuff, Dr. G. I really appreciate your time and your energy and your enthusiasm and your writing and putting all your information out there for people to digest, absorb, assimilate, and heal from. So thanks for being with us.
You're very welcome. It was totally a pleasure.
All right. Peace and love.
All this out there, because if it wasn't for folks like you, I wouldn't get to give my messages often. I always say yes anytime someone says, hey, would you meet with me, do a podcast? I always say yes, because you never know who's going to hear any one of your interviews that you do, and their life's going to be changed forever. And,
Totally.
you know, I was someone's first podcast once, you know, he said, I want to start a healing podcast. Would you be willing to do this? And I said, yes. And that was like 5-6 years ago. And I still to this day get messages from people who tell me that they heard that podcast and it changed their life. Right. So as much as I try to share things, you know, for people to have even heard of me, someone has to talk to me or get the message out there, you know, and
Right.
I admire the work that you do to actually take the time to find people that can inspire others and change their lives. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no shortage of inspiring people out there. And I think it is like, you know, obviously we've got this network, this internet, this social network that we can, you know, I like to think of it and envision, because there's a lot of negativity floating around, but I like to think about just sending out good healing vibes and information that overcome and overpower whatever sort of misinformation or confusion or, you know, negativity might be out there. So thanks for being a positive voice.
You're welcome.
All right, peace and love, and until next time.